A wolf found a lost puppy in the woods, but what it did next left everyone speechless. The sun dipped below the towering redwoods, casting long shadows across the forest floor. A lone gray wolf, whom the local Native American tribe silently named Ghost for his ability to move unseen through the trees, emerged from his den. Ghost was a magnificent creature, his coat a mix of silver and gray, his eyes a piercing amber that seemed to hold the wisdom of the ancient forest. He stretched, his powerful muscles rippling beneath his thick fur, and took a deep breath, savoring the scent of damp earth and pine needles. Ghost was the alpha of a small pack, but tragedy had struck a few months ago. A territorial dispute with a rival pack had left him the sole survivor. The loss of his companions weighed heavily on him, but he carried on, driven by instinct and a deep-rooted loyalty to his territory. Every day was a reminder of his solitude. The playful nips and jostles, the shared warmth of bodies huddled together during the cold nights, the comforting chorus of howls that once echoed through the valley, all gone, replaced by an echoing silence that gnawed at his soul. He patrolled the boundaries of his domain, marking his scent on trees and rocks, a silent declaration of his sovereignty. The forest was his, yet it felt emptier than ever. Squirrels chattered at him from the branches, seemingly mocking his loneliness. A hawk circled overhead, its keen eyes scanning the ground for prey, a constant reminder of the relentless cycle of life and death in the wild. Tonight, hunger gnawed at his belly. He had not made a kill in days. His usual hunting grounds seemed devoid of life. Perhaps the deer had sensed his sorrow, his lack of focus, and moved on to safer pastures. Or maybe it was just bad luck, a cruel twist of fate that mirrored the emptiness in his heart. A deer trail wound its way through the undergrowth, and Ghost followed it, his senses alert for any sign of prey. He moved with a grace that belied his size, his paws barely making a sound on the soft earth. He was a hunter, a survivor, a creature perfectly adapted to the rhythms of the wild. But beneath the fierce exterior, there was a loneliness, a yearning for the companionship he had lost. As the last rays of sunlight faded, Ghost found himself drawn to a particular scent, something unfamiliar yet intriguing. It was faint, carried on the gentle breeze, a smell that spoke of vulnerability and innocence. Curiosity piqued. He followed the scent, his senses heightened, his pace quickening. He moved through the trees like a phantom, his gray coat blending seamlessly with the deepening shadows. The scent led him to a small clearing, where a patch of moonlight illuminated a most unexpected sight. Curled up amidst the ferns, whimpering softly, was a small puppy. It was a German shepherd, its coat a rich black and tan, its eyes closed in sleep. It was clearly lost and alone, far from any human dwelling. Ghost paused, his instincts warring within him. He was a predator, and this small creature was easy prey. Yet, something held him back. He had never encountered a puppy before, and its helplessness stirred something deep within him, a protective instinct he hadn't felt since the loss of his pack. He cautiously approached the puppy, his amber eyes studying it intently. The puppy stirred, its ears twitching, and then it opened its eyes. Those big, brown eyes met Ghost's gaze, and in that instant, something shifted within the lone wolf. He saw not prey, but a lost and vulnerable creature that needed his help. Little did he know that this encounter would change his life forever. Miles away from Ghost's solitary domain, a family was enjoying a sunny afternoon in the Redwood National Park. The Johnson family, John, a sturdy man with a hearty laugh, Mary, his gentle and kind wife, and their 8-year-old daughter, Lily, were on a hiking trip, their golden retriever, Buddy, bounding excitedly ahead of them. Lily, a bright and curious child with a love for all creatures great and small, skipped along the trail, her eyes wide with wonder at the towering trees and the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves. Buddy, ever the adventurer, ventured off the trail, his nose twitching at the enticing smells of the forest. He chased a butterfly, then a squirrel, his tail wagging furiously. Lily, distracted by a patch of wildflowers, didn't notice her furry companion straying further and further away. John and Mary, engrossed in conversation, were also oblivious to Buddy's disappearance. They continued along the path, assuming their dog would eventually catch up as he always did. Meanwhile, Buddy, caught up in his explorations, found himself deep within the woods. The sounds of his human family faded, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the chirping of birds. He sniffed at a fallen log, then chased a lizard that darted across his path. He was in his element, a happy dog in a world of endless wonders. But as the sun began to set, and the shadows grew longer, a sense of unease crept over Buddy. He whined softly, looking around for his family. The forest, once so inviting, now seemed vast and intimidating. He tried to retrace his steps, but the scents were confusing, and he soon realized he was lost. Fear started to gnaw at him. He barked, hoping his family would hear him, but only the echo of his own voice answered. He was alone, a small and vulnerable creature in a world that suddenly seemed full of unseen dangers. He shivered, not from the cold, but from a growing sense of dread. Exhausted and frightened, Buddy stumbled upon a small clearing. He curled up amongst the ferns, unaware of the piercing amber eyes that were watching him from the shadows. Ghost watched the puppy sleep, his amber eyes filled with a curious mix of predatory instinct and something akin to tenderness. The pup whimpered in its sleep, its tiny paws twitching, perhaps chasing dream rabbits. The scent was unfamiliar, intriguing. It lacked the wildness of the forest creatures, the musk of deer, the sharp tang of fox. Instead, it carried a hint of something softer, something almost comforting. He circled the clearing, keeping a safe distance, his senses alert for any sign of danger. The forest was full of predators, both large and small. A bobcat, an owl, even a hungry raccoon could pose a threat to the defenseless pup. As the night deepened, the forest sounds grew louder. An owl hooted in the distance, its call echoing through the trees. A twig snapped nearby, sending a shiver down Ghost's spine. He tensed, his muscles coiled, ready to defend the pup from any unseen threat. He couldn't explain it, this urge to protect. It went against his nature, his instincts as a predator. Yet, something about the pup's vulnerability, its complete trust in the world around it, touched a chord within him. Perhaps it was a reminder of the pups he had lost, the playful companions who had once filled his life with joy. Or maybe it was simply an act of defiance against the loneliness that had consumed him since the loss of his pack. Whatever the reason, Ghost was determined to keep the pup safe. He settled down at the edge of the clearing, his eyes fixed on the sleeping form. He would watch over it until dawn, then decide what to do next. As the first rays of sunlight filtered through the trees, the pup stirred. It yawned, a tiny pink tongue peeking out from between its sharp little teeth. It stretched, its small body shaking off the remnants of sleep, and then it opened its eyes. Those big, brown eyes, full of innocence and trust, met Ghost's gaze. The pup tilted its head, a soft whimper escaping its throat. It seemed to sense no danger from the large wolf that stood before it. Ghost, in turn, felt a strange warmth spread through him. He had expected fear, perhaps even a desperate attempt to flee. But the pup simply looked at him with curiosity, its tail giving a tentative wag. He took a step closer, and the pup responded by taking a wobbly step towards him. It sniffed the air, its nose twitching, then let out a soft bark, a sound that was more playful than threatening. Ghost lowered his head, allowing the pup to sniff him. He felt the soft fur brush against his nose, the warm breath on his face. It was a sensation he hadn't experienced in a long time, a touch that spoke of companionship, of trust. In that moment, Ghost made a decision. He would not harm this pup. He would protect it, care for it, until he could find a way to return it to its rightful place. He would become its unexpected guardian, a wolf with a puppy in his care. The pup, emboldened by Ghost's gentle demeanor, bounded towards him, its tail wagging with unrestrained enthusiasm. It licked Ghost's nose, a gesture that sent a shiver of surprise through the wolf. He had never been greeted with such open affection, such unbridled joy. Ghost, in turn, felt a strange urge to reciprocate. He tentatively licked the pup's head, his rough tongue causing the little creature to squeal with delight. The pup, in response, nipped at Ghost's ears, the sharp little teeth surprisingly gentle. A playful wrestling match ensued, the pup tumbling and rolling, Ghost carefully restraining his strength. The clearing echoed with the sounds of happy barks and playful growls. It was a scene that would have seemed impossible just hours earlier. A wolf and a puppy, predator and prey, engaged in a joyful dance of friendship. As the day wore on, Ghost found himself captivated by the pup's boundless energy and infectious enthusiasm. The pup, which he decided to call Little Bear for its clumsy gait and playful bear-like swats, followed him everywhere, its little legs struggling to keep up with Ghost's long strides. Ghost, who had been accustomed to the solitary life of a hunter, found himself adapting to his new role as a guardian. He slowed his pace, allowing Little Bear to keep up. He shared his kills with the pup, tearing off small pieces of meat and gently nudging them towards the eager little mouth. He taught Little Bear the ways of the forest, the art of survival. He showed the pup how to hunt for mice and squirrels, how to identify edible berries and roots. He warned Little Bear of the dangers, the hidden traps and the lurking predators. Little Bear, in turn, brought a spark of joy back into Ghost's life. The pup's playful antics and unconditional love filled the void left by the loss of his pack. Ghost found himself smiling, a rare occurrence in the months since his solitude. One evening, as they lay together beneath the starry sky, Little Bear snuggled close to Ghost, seeking warmth and comfort. Ghost wrapped his large body around the pup, shielding it from the cool night air. He felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in a long time, a feeling of belonging, of purpose. He knew that their time together was limited. Sooner or later, the pup's human family would come searching for it. But for now, he would cherish every moment, every playful bark, every shared meal, every quiet night spent under the watchful eyes of the ancient redwoods. He would be Little Bear's guardian, his protector, his friend. Life with Little Bear was a constant adventure. Each day brought new discoveries, new challenges, and new joys for Ghost. The once solitary wolf now had a constant companion, a shadow that followed him everywhere, a source of endless amusement and affection. Ghost, in turn, became a teacher, a mentor, a protector. He showed Little Bear how to navigate the intricate network of trails that crisscrossed the forest, how to distinguish the scent of prey from the myriad of other smells that filled the air. He taught the pup how to stalk a squirrel, how to pounce on a mouse, how to avoid the thorns and brambles that could snag his fur. Little Bear, ever eager to learn, absorbed these lessons with an enthusiasm that warmed Ghost's heart. The pup would mimic Ghost's every move, his clumsy attempts at stalking and pouncing often ending in hilarious tumbles and rolls. But with each passing day, Little Bear grew more confident, more agile, more in tune with the rhythms of the wild. One day, while hunting for rabbits in a sun-drenched meadow, Ghost and Little Bear stumbled upon a family of deer grazing peacefully. Little Bear, his instincts honed by Ghost's teachings, froze, his body low to the ground, his eyes fixed on the unsuspecting deer. Ghost, sensing the pup's eagerness, gave a silent nod of encouragement. Little Bear, with a burst of energy, launched himself towards the deer, his small body a blur of black and tan against the green grass. The deer, startled by the sudden attack, scattered in panic. Little Bear, his short legs unable to match the deer's speed, soon fell behind. He barked in frustration, his tail drooping in disappointment. Ghost, watching from a distance, felt a surge of pride. Little Bear had shown courage, initiative, and a natural instinct for the hunt. He had learned well. He trotted over to the dejected pup and nuzzled him gently, offering words of encouragement in their silent language of growls and whines. He then led Little Bear towards a patch of wild berries, a sweet treat to ease the sting of disappointment. As they ate, Ghost pondered the future. Little Bear was growing rapidly, his puppyhood fading with each passing day. Soon, he would be a strong and capable dog, ready to face the world on his own. But what world would that be? The world of humans, with its fences and leashes and rules? Or the wild world of the forest, with its dangers and freedoms? Ghost knew he couldn't keep Little Bear forever. Sooner or later, the pup would have to choose his own path. But until then, he would cherish every moment, every lesson, every shared adventure. He would be the best guardian, the best teacher, the best friend he could be. The days turned into weeks, and Little Bear thrived under Ghost's watchful eye. He was no longer a clumsy pup, but a strong and agile young dog, his black and tan coat gleaming in the sunlight, his movements mirroring the grace of his wolf guardian. One crisp morning, as Ghost and Little Bear were patrolling their territory, a new scent drifted on the wind, a scent that brought Ghost to a sudden halt. It was the scent of humans, a scent he hadn't encountered since the fateful day he lost his pack. He tensed, his muscles coiling, his instincts screaming at him to flee. But then he looked at Little Bear, who seemed oblivious to the approaching danger, his tail wagging excitedly as he chased a butterfly through the undergrowth. Ghost knew he couldn't run. He couldn't abandon Little Bear, not now. He had to protect him, even if it meant facing the humans, the creatures who had brought so much pain and destruction to his world. He led Little Bear deeper into the forest, towards a hidden den he had discovered weeks ago. It was a small cave, concealed by a thicket of ferns and vines, a perfect hiding place. He nudged Little Bear towards the den, urging him to enter. The pup, sensing the urgency in Ghost's demeanor, obeyed, disappearing into the darkness of the cave. Ghost positioned himself at the entrance, his body blocking the opening, his senses alert for any sign of the approaching humans. He could hear their voices now, faint but growing closer, their words carried on the wind. "Buddy, buddy, where are you?" A young girl's voice called out, filled with worry and desperation. Ghost's heart ached for the girl. He could imagine her pain, her fear, her longing for her lost companion. But he couldn't let her find Little Bear. Not yet. He had to be sure they wouldn't harm him, wouldn't take him away. The voices grew louder, closer. Ghost could hear the rustling of leaves, the snapping of twigs, as the humans made their way through the undergrowth. He held his breath, his body tense, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the trees. It was a young girl, her face streaked with tears, her eyes red and swollen. She was calling out for her dog, her voice filled with anguish. Ghost's heart went out to her. He wanted to comfort her, to tell her that her beloved companion was safe. But he couldn't. He could only watch as she passed by, her footsteps fading into the distance. He waited until the sounds of the humans had disappeared completely. Then he turned and entered the den. Little Bear was curled up in a ball, his eyes wide with fear. Ghost nuzzled him gently, offering comfort and reassurance. He knew the humans would be back. They wouldn't give up easily. He had to find a way to protect Little Bear, to keep him safe from the world that had already caused him so much pain. The following morning, Ghost awoke to the sound of distant voices. The humans were back. He felt a surge of anxiety, but he quickly masked it, knowing that Little Bear would pick up on his fear. He nudged the pup awake, his amber eyes conveying a silent message of urgency. "We have to move," he seemed to say. "They're close." Little Bear, sensing the danger, followed Ghost out of the den. They moved swiftly through the undergrowth, Ghost leading the way, his senses heightened, his every muscle tense. He knew these woods intimately, every hidden trail, every secret clearing. He would use this knowledge to his advantage, to outwit the humans, to keep Little Bear safe. The voices grew louder, closer. Ghost could hear the crashing of branches, the heavy thud of boots on the forest floor. He pushed Little Bear onwards, urging him to run faster, to keep up. They reached a stream, its waters gurgling over mossy rocks. Ghost plunged in, the cold water a welcome shock to his senses. He motioned for Little Bear to follow, and the pup, after a moment's hesitation, jumped into the stream. The icy water numbed their paws, but they pressed on, swimming against the current, the sound of the rushing water masking their scent from the pursuing humans. They emerged from the stream, their fur dripping, their bodies shivering. Ghost led Little Bear up a steep incline, scrambling over rocks and fallen logs, his powerful legs propelling him forward. He glanced back and saw the humans emerging from the trees, their faces grim, their eyes scanning the terrain. They were gaining on them. Ghost pushed Little Bear onwards, his heart pounding in his chest. They reached the crest of the hill, and a vast expanse of forest stretched before them. He could see a distant ridge, its slopes covered in a dense thicket of trees. That was their destination, their sanctuary. But they wouldn't make it. The humans were too close. He could hear their shouts now, their angry voices echoing through the trees. He turned to face them, his body blocking Little Bear's path, his amber eyes blazing with defiance. He would stand his ground, fight if he had to protect the pup he had come to love. The humans emerged from the trees, their faces contorted with rage. They had guns in their hands, their fingers on the triggers. Ghost let out a low growl, a warning, a challenge. He wouldn't back down, not while Little Bear was in danger. One of the men raised his gun, aiming it at Ghost. The wolf braced himself for the impact, the searing pain, the final darkness. But the shot never came. A voice, filled with authority, rang out, stopping the man in his tracks. "Hold your fire. Don't shoot." It was John, his face pale, his eyes filled with concern. He stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We just want the dog," he said, his voice trembling. "We don't want to hurt you." Ghost hesitated, his instincts warring within him. He didn't trust these humans, but he could see the sincerity in John's eyes. He looked at Little Bear, who was cowering behind him, his body trembling with fear. He couldn't put the pup in harm's way. He had to surrender. He lowered his head, a sign of submission, and stepped aside, allowing the humans to approach. John knelt down, his arms outstretched, calling out to Little Bear, "Buddy, come here, boy. It's okay." Little Bear, recognizing his human's voice, let out a whimper of relief and ran towards John, his tail wagging furiously. John scooped him up in his arms, burying his face in the dog's fur, tears streaming down his cheeks. Ghost watched, his heart heavy with sadness. He had lost Little Bear, but he had saved him. He had done what he had to do. As the humans disappeared into the trees, carrying Little Bear with them, Ghost turned and walked away, his head held high, his spirit unbroken. He was alone again, but he would carry the memory of Little Bear with him, a reminder of the bond they had shared, the lessons they had learned, the love they had found in the heart of the wild. The forest seemed to hold its breath as Ghost retreated into its depths. The once familiar sounds, the rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, the babbling of the stream, now seemed hollow, devoid of meaning. Every shadow, every scent, every whisper of the wind was a reminder of Little Bear, of the joyful companionship that had been so abruptly snatched away. He wandered aimlessly, his paws carrying him through the familiar terrain, yet his spirit felt lost, adrift in a sea of emptiness. He revisited their favorite spots, the sun-drenched meadow where they had hunted rabbits, the hidden clearing where they had played, the cozy den where they had sought shelter from the rain. But each place was now a monument to his loss, a silent testament to the bond that had been broken. Hunger gnawed at his belly, but he had no appetite. The thrill of the hunt, the satisfaction of a successful kill, had lost its appeal. What was the point of survival when there was no one to share it with, no one to celebrate his victories, no one to comfort him in his defeats? Night fell, and the forest grew dark and silent. Ghost sought shelter in a hollow log, his body curled into a tight ball, his amber eyes staring into the darkness. Sleep eluded him. Images of Little Bear flashed through his mind. The pup's playful antics, his infectious laughter, his unconditional love. He longed to hear Little Bear's happy barks, to feel the warmth of his small body pressed against his own, to share a quiet moment under the starry sky. But all that remained were memories, echoes of a past that could never be reclaimed. Days turned into nights and nights into days. Ghost continued to wander, a solitary figure in a vast and indifferent wilderness. He hunted out of necessity, his movements mechanical, his heart devoid of passion. He was a ghost in his own domain, a shadow of his former self. One evening, as he was drinking from a stream, he caught his reflection in the water. He barely recognized the creature staring back at him. His coat, once sleek and vibrant, was now dull and matted. His eyes, once filled with fire and intelligence, were now clouded with sadness. He turned away from his reflection, unable to bear the sight of his own despair. He had lost everything: his pack, his purpose, his joy. He was alone, truly alone, in a world that seemed to have no place for him. But as he stood there, lost in his grief, a faint sound reached his ears, a sound that sent a shiver of hope through his weary heart. It was a distant bark, a familiar bark, a bark that could only belong to one creature. Little Bear. Ghost froze, every muscle in his body tense, his senses straining to identify the source of the sound. Couldn't be. It was impossible. Little Bear was gone, back with his human family. Yet, the bark echoed again, closer this time, carrying a note of urgency, of distress. He followed the sound, his pace quickening, his heart pounding with a mixture of hope and fear. He navigated the familiar trails with a renewed sense of purpose, his instincts guiding him towards the source of the bark. The forest floor gave way to a rocky outcrop, and there, perched precariously on a ledge, was Little Bear. The pup was whimpering, his tail tucked between his legs, his eyes wide with panic. He was trapped, unable to climb back up the steep incline, the ground a dizzying drop below. Ghost felt a surge of relief wash over him. Little Bear was alive, and he needed his help. He approached cautiously, aware of the precarious footing, his amber eyes conveying a message of reassurance. "I'm here," he seemed to say. "Don't be afraid." Little Bear, seeing his wolf guardian, let out a joyful bark, his tail wagging tentatively. He inched towards the edge of the ledge, his eyes pleading for help. Ghost assessed the situation. The ledge was narrow, the drop treacherous. He couldn't reach Little Bear directly without risking both their lives. He had to find another way. He circled the outcrop, searching for a safer route. He spotted a narrow crevice that led down to the base of the ledge. It was a risky descent, but it was their only option. He carefully made his way down the crevice, his powerful claws finding purchase on the loose rocks. He reached the bottom, his body trembling with exertion, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked up at Little Bear, who was watching him with a mixture of hope and anxiety. Ghost let out a soft whine, encouraging the pup to jump. Little Bear hesitated for a moment. Then, with a leap of faith, he launched himself towards Ghost. The wolf braced himself, his strong body ready to absorb the impact. Little Bear landed safely in Ghost's arms, his small body trembling with relief. He licked Ghost's face, his tail wagging furiously. Ghost nuzzled the pup, his heart swelling with joy. He had saved Little Bear, and in doing so, he had rediscovered his own purpose, his own reason for being. They made their way back to the familiar trails, their bond renewed, their spirits lifted. Ghost knew that this reunion might be temporary, that Little Bear belonged with his human family. But for now, he would cherish every moment, every shared adventure, every quiet night spent under the watchful eyes of the ancient redwoods. He had found his purpose again, not as a lone wolf, but as a guardian, a protector, a friend. Ghost led Little Bear back to their den, a sense of warmth spreading through him. He had his companion back, his purpose restored. But as they settled down for the night, a nagging question lingered in his mind. How had Little Bear escaped his human family? The answer came the following morning, in the form of a young boy who stumbled upon their clearing. He was about 10 years old, with tousled brown hair and freckles sprinkled across his nose. He He was crying, his shoulders shaking with sobs. Ghost tensed, his protective instincts kicking in. But the boy posed no threat. He was just a child, lost and heartbroken. The boy saw Little Bear and his face lit up. He rushed towards the pup, scooping him up in his arms, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Buddy! Oh, buddy! I thought I'd lost you forever." Little Bear, recognizing the boy, licked his face, his tail wagging ecstatically. Ghost watched the reunion, a sense of understanding dawning on him. This was Little Bear's human, the one he truly belonged with. The boy, noticing Ghost for the first time, froze. His eyes widened in fear, his grip on Little Bear tightening. Ghost, sensing the boy's apprehension, lowered his head in a gesture of submission. He wanted the boy to understand that he meant no harm, that he had only been protecting Little Bear. The boy cautiously knelt down and offered Little Bear to Ghost. The wolf licked the pup's head, then gently nudged him back towards the boy. The boy, his fear subsiding, smiled. He understood. He saw the bond between the wolf and his dog, the love and loyalty that transcended species. He sat down on the ground, Little Bear curled up in his lap. He began to talk to Ghost, telling him about how Little Bear had escaped from their backyard, how he had searched for him day and night, how heartbroken he had been. Ghost listened, his amber eyes filled with understanding. He knew this boy loved Little Bear as much as he did. As the sun began to set, the boy stood up, Little Bear by his side. He looked at Ghost, a silent question in his eyes. Ghost nodded. It was time for Little Bear to go home. The boy smiled and turned to leave, Little Bear trotting by his side. But after a few steps, Little Bear stopped and looked back at Ghost, his eyes filled with sadness. Ghost nudged him gently, encouraging him to follow his human. Little Bear, with a final lick to Ghost's nose, turned and ran after the boy. Ghost watched them disappear into the trees, a bittersweet ache in his heart. He had lost Little Bear again, but this time it was different. This time he knew it was for the best. He was alone again, but he was not empty. He had the memories of their time together, the lessons they had learned, the love they had shared, and he knew, deep in his heart, that their paths would cross again. The boy, whose name was Ethan, returned to the clearing the next day, and the next, and the next. He always came alone, leaving his family behind, venturing into the depths of the forest to seek out his wolf friend. Ghost, initially wary, gradually warmed to Ethan's presence. He saw the genuine affection in the boy's eyes, the respect in his gentle touch. He learned to trust Ethan, to anticipate his visits, to share quiet moments of companionship with him. Ethan would bring offerings, scraps of meat from his family's meals, a worn-out tennis ball, a soft blanket to share on chilly evenings. He would talk to Ghost, sharing stories of his life in the human world, his dreams, his fears, his hopes. Ghost, in turn, would respond with soft growls and whines, his amber eyes conveying a depth of understanding that surprised Ethan. He felt a connection with this wild creature, a bond that transcended language, a friendship that defied the boundaries between species. One day, Ethan arrived at the clearing with a troubled expression. He sat down beside Ghost, his shoulders slumped, his eyes filled with sadness. "My parents," he began, his voice trembling. "They want to move. They say this place is too dangerous, too wild. They want to go back to the city where it's safe." Ghost listened, his heart sinking. He understood the boy's dilemma, the conflict between his love for the wild and his loyalty to his family. He nuzzled Ethan, offering comfort and understanding. He knew he couldn't influence the boy's decision, but he could offer his unwavering support. Ethan, sensing Ghost's empathy, felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. He leaned against the wolf, his tears soaking into the thick fur. "I don't want to leave," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "I don't want to leave you, or this forest, or Buddy." Ghost licked away the boy's tears, his rough tongue surprisingly gentle. He wanted Ethan to know that their bond would endure, no matter what the future held. The next few days were filled with a bittersweet anticipation. Ethan continued his visits, his time with Ghost becoming even more precious, each shared moment a treasure to be cherished. Then, one morning, Ethan arrived at the clearing with a backpack slung over his shoulder and a determined look in his eyes. "I've made a decision," he announced, his voice firm. "I'm staying." Ghost looked at him, his amber eyes filled with surprise. "My parents," Ethan continued, "they understand. They see how much this place means to me, how much you mean to me. They've agreed to let me stay with my grandparents who live nearby. I can visit you every day, and Buddy can come too." Ghost felt a surge of joy, a warmth that spread through his entire being. He nuzzled Ethan, his tail wagging excitedly. He had found his place in the world, not just as a wolf, but as a guardian, a friend, a bridge between the wild and the human world. And so, a new chapter began. Ethan, true to his word, visited Ghost every day, accompanied by Little Bear, who was now a boisterous young dog, full of energy and affection. The clearing became their meeting place, a sanctuary where the boundaries between the wild and the human world blurred. Ghost, once a solitary creature, now had a family of his own, a human boy and his dog, who brought laughter and warmth into his life. He taught them the ways of the forest, the secrets of the trees and the whispers of the wind. He shared his knowledge of the animals, the plants, the intricate web of life that connected them all. Ethan, in turn, shared his human world with Ghost. He brought books filled with stories and pictures. He played music on a small portable radio. He described the wonders of the city, the bustling streets, the towering buildings, the endless stream of human activity. Little Bear, caught between two worlds, thrived in this unique environment. He was a bridge between his wolf guardian and his human companion, a symbol of the harmony that could exist between species. Years passed, and the bond between them deepened. Ethan grew into a young man, his youthful exuberance tempered by a quiet wisdom, his love for the forest reflected in his gentle eyes. Ghost, though his muzzle was now streaked with gray and his movements a little slower, remained a powerful presence, a guardian of the forest, a protector of his human family. Little Bear, now a mature dog, his black and tan coat flecked with white, was a constant companion, a loyal friend, a living testament to the enduring power of their unlikely friendship. One day, Ethan arrived at the clearing with a young woman by his side. She was beautiful, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Ethan introduced her as his wife, Sarah. Ghost welcomed Sarah into their circle, sensing her genuine love for Ethan, her respect for the forest, her appreciation for the wild spirit that resided within her husband. Soon, a new generation joined their gatherings. Ethan and Sarah's children, bright-eyed and curious, eager to learn the secrets of the forest from their wolf grandfather. Ghost watched them play, his heart filled with contentment. He had found his legacy, not in the bloodline of his pack, but in the hearts of these humans who would carry his spirit, his wisdom, his love for the wild, into the future. And so, the story of the wolf who found a lost puppy in the woods became a legend, whispered among the trees, carried on the wind, a testament to the enduring power of friendship, loyalty, and the interconnectedness of all living things.